Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to day 7 of the Modiragatsi competition. I'm so glad you're still with us, and I hope that you enjoyed working on the content with regards to mobile application development today. I think you might have learned a few things about what goes into just the early stages of application development, even before you start typing anything or start implementing anything for your eventual app. So this is the only day that you spent on this topic. So we would like to thank our sponsors for the mobile application development content, Mendix and Siemens. Thank you very much for all of the content that you provided and also the opportunity that you are giving our students to, in their own time, work on the Mendix Rapid Mobile Application Developer course. So if you still have time or want to try your hand at mobile app development in a low code environment where you don't need to learn 6 languages just to implement your mobile app idea, then please follow the instructions for the optional assignment that you had today. The students who compete in the accelerator version of Modiragatsi did this since Friday. They started on Friday with the mobile application development course, the rapid developer course of Mendix. Most of them progressed really well, and they should be finishing their 3-day course today. I've seen that about half of the class already completed this and uploaded their rapid application developer certificate. So well done. That's a skill that you can now list on your CV. That will be a really good thing to have when you are applying for work. So the high school learners working on the competition version of Modiragatsi, you won't have time to work on that course this week just because we need to move on to the other remaining content areas. But if you have time in another holiday or after this course, you can do this over a weekend, then please use the opportunity you have to complete this Mendix course. Tomorrow we move on to a new topic. Tomorrow we look at intellectual property, what it is, how it can be protected, and what your rights are. We'll look at various different types of intellectual property, and your assignment will be to identify the areas in your project or in your potential product that could be potential intellectual property. So that will be very interesting. We will again have a sponsor for the content. So in advance, we thank Kish IP for their content that they have developed. I found the 3 videos that they have developed especially for you. You will be the first ones ever to see the videos that they have created and that you will watch tomorrow. They created it specifically for you guys. You can't find that content anywhere else. So thank you to Kish IP for the time and effort they spent on the content for tomorrow on intellectual property. You're free to ask any questions in the live chat. We will keep our eyes peeled for any questions that you might pose on the live chat. Okay, we had a question today regarding the assignments that you had to complete for the mobile app development part of this course, where one of the students said that she's still really unsure about how you define these different personas that you need to complete this for. And I used an example that I only afterwards thought that might be easier for all of you to understand. So if we use Ifundi as an example of a software product that is used by different personas, then it would mean that you and I both log in through the same portal. And once we log in, we see different information. So you see, um, I use it. When I use Ifundi, I use it to create some content for you and to create an assignment for you to complete. And after you have completed the assignment, I can see what you have submitted. I can grade this. But you, when you enter the same portal with the same process, you see something different. You see the information that I have provided to you, and you also see an assignment space where you can submit something. After I've graded it, you can see your results. So that is two personas using the same software product, but we use the same product for different things. So I use it to create content and see what you submit in terms of assignments, and you use it to receive the content that I gave to you and to submit some documentation to me. So we are therefore two different personas or two different user types using the same. So I will be a lecturer user and you will be a student user. So, and just like the two of us, types of users exist, there's also a third type of user that will be an administrator that will typically be able to see all of the different university courses. I can only see my courses that I've created, but there's one user that can see all of the courses so that they can delete a course or they can make changes to the way information is prepared, or they can find results for a very specific student. So they can do everything. So they can see your side, my side, and a bunch of other information too. So they are a third persona. They are the administrator. So when you think about your specific product, look at it that way, that not necessarily an old person and a young person would use the app different, and therefore there are two different types of users. That is something that you would have used in thinking in the design thinking process, but now you're looking at different types of users, not necessarily just differing in age, but different types of users that will use the same tool to do different things with that tool. I hope that clarifies that question about the personas. And once you have defined who your personas are or who your typical users are, then you complete user stories for each kind of user. So each type of user will have a different journey through your product. And even if it's not a software product, if it is a completely hardware product that users interact with, maybe it can also allow for different people to use the same tool for different things. So again, think about the user stories, the things that that kind of user would use your product for, and then think about the ways in which you can enable that use through some of the features that you create. The third activity was just an additional activity. It's not that critical. It's usually something that engineers will do themselves to do the data modeling. But it is good to know and really good to think about all of the data that you want to record and what you want to use it for.
Now, what is there left to learn for training program, and when will we get our next round of more configured?
This is useful. Okay, we have a question from Courts asking us what I meant by in activity 2 by telling you to do things to complete the activity as wireframes. Wireframes are those of drawings that I've included as an example, where you have an app in outline form, or as a line drawing with some written words on it, and not necessarily implemented with all of the look and feel implemented. So you can see there's a button, but it's not necessarily implemented in a tool where you can see more than just that there is supposed to be a button there and that this button will go to a specific screen and that screen will have specific information. So that style of documentation that I used for the planning phase, that is called a wireframe. I will also send you a link to one of the tools that or two of the tools that I, as an app developer, typically use to create some more advanced prototypes of the apps that I design. Some of you might have seen or might be using one of my apps. Chop Chop is a COVID-19 screening app. I will also post a link to that in the comments that I've developed with one of my colleagues that's being used at schools to collect all of that screening information on a daily basis, the temperature, the answers to the COVID-19 screening questions. And that is a product that we developed and launched during lockdown last year to help schools to process the data and save time not only at the gate where the data needs to be collected, but also at that point where the data then needs to be captured and analyzed to be able to give that data to a specific or to the Department of Education to report on the statistics of everyone on site and how healthy they are. So that's Chop Chop. I will post a link to that and then also to a link to UXPin and the other software that I typically use if I want to create a more detailed mock-up of the app that I'm developing and not stick to wireframes. But wireframes are usually a very easy to understand and cheap to implement way of showing your client what you have in mind to make sure that you and the client, if I'm the software developer now and I develop software for a client, that we understand the same thing before I start implementing that functionality, because to implement the functionality takes a lot of time and that will cost money, but we can still change the layout of the app, or we can change the functionality, we can change the questions that we ask based on that wireframe. Okay, we have another question from Tegan asking us, what are the other topics that is still left to learn in this training course? This is day 7, so we still have 2 topics left. The first one is intellectual property and how to protect it. And the second one that you will counter on Thursday is how to start and pitch a business idea, a business with your product idea. So tomorrow's intellectual property content was created and is sponsored by Kish IP, a very prominent intellectual property patent attorney firm in various places in South Africa, but they have large offices in Pretoria and Johannesburg. So they will be presenting the content tomorrow. And then on Thursday, sponsored by the NWU Business School, you will have a lecture on how to start a business with your idea. So there's 4 components to how to start a business. One would be the business model canvas. The second would be different revenue models. Then there is the value proposition, and finally, how to pitch your idea. So those 2 main topics still left this week. So I promised you that we'll be finishing off the new content and all of the theoretical content on Thursday. Then on Friday, you will spend the entire day developing your final entry. Remember that your final entry will be a short investor pitch in video format, and then also a short report about your idea that gives the judges a better understanding of what the problem is, why it is a problem and why it needs to be addressed, what your solution is, how it functions, and then also what is aimed with skills that you'll gain on Thursday. How can you generate money with this idea, and aimed with the content that you create tomorrow. What is the potential intellectual property? Because if you have protected intellectual property, that means that your idea has more value. So when an investor will give you funding, the fact that you have intellectual property protection in place would mean that they would assign a higher value to the idea and maybe give you more funding to develop that idea. So you will develop your 10-slide pitch deck, which you will then narrate for us or present to us in a video format, and you will then also write a short report. So you'll have the entire Friday to work on that and to ask questions. You can then also still work on it on Saturday and Sunday, and by the end of Sunday, you will submit your final entries, both the video and the report, on Ifundi, and the entries will close, or the final submissions will close at 5 to 12 Sunday evening, so that on Monday morning, once we get to the office, I can immediately distribute your videos and your reports to the judges for judging. I will also on Friday morning give you a short live overview of the judging process and the criteria that they will be looking for, so that you can ensure and double check that you have everything in place that you need to make sure that you address all of the questions that a judge could typically have. I did on Sunday evening. On Monday, we send it for judging. A week later, we will announce our top 5 in each category. And then on the 9th of August, we will announce our ultimate winners from those top 25 teams. So I hope you're ready. Remember, if you haven't registered for the engineering event yet, please do so, so that you can see who wins. You've made a bunch of new friends now, so come and attend the engineering event regardless of whether you one of the top 25, so that you can see who the winners are and that you can celebrate with them and congratulate them. Since we will be having the online self-defense courses, make sure that you don't attend the engineering event alone. Um, Attend it with a friend or another girl in your family who you can practice these new skills on during the practical lessons. I just spent an entire explanation talking to myself, not realizing that I was actually muted while explaining. So let me explain again. So Tegan had a question about the specific attribute types of activity 5.3 that you needed to do. I said that you can do this in either Excel or Google Sheets, but actually you could have done this in Word as well, anywhere where you can create a table easily. And this makes a lot of sense if you have an app where you want to store data. So if it is a static app where the data will differ based on who logs in and that it's data that will frequently change, then we would have a we would require a database, and then we would have these entities and attributes that will be stored in a database. And then we need to reflect on what the data is that we want to store and what type it is. So typically that's not something that you would need to decide if you're not the one developing the app. Then it is typically the task of the software engineer that whose job it is to implement it for you. So, for instance, the business over here, I said that one of the buttons that we'll be creating to add information on and to display that information to the user of various different businesses. In terms of, in order to give our typical family users of the ProPatch app a good idea of who will be using or what businesses offer a specific activity for them, we would typically need the following information or attributes. So we need a business name, we need an address, a manager, a contact number, we need a list of the facilities, we need activities, we need to know what the webpage is so that users of the app quickly browse there. Users of the app might want to know whether they're going to pay an admission fee when they visit this site. And just to make it easier to distinguish between different businesses, we might want to upload logo. And so the first column in this table is a list of all of the attributes. And the way in which I created this finite list is by trying to register a company to register a company and go through this example and see whether I have enough information. And if I realize I don't have enough information, then I can add another attribute here. So the example just helps me to validate that I'm asking all of the questions that I want to ask. And then this attribute type you get from this specific table on entities and attributes. This is from the Mendix courseware, where we say that, for instance, the amount that we want to spend or the admission fee would be a positive or negative number that can have digits after the decimal point. So an amount of money is a typical example of a decimal type of data. Then in terms of enumeration, for instance, this is a list of predefined values, and it is a string that will be stored after it was, yeah. So there, for instance, with the business facilities, I made a list of possible facilities that a tourist business could have. I've added them below as they have no facilities available. They have accommodation, camping, electricity, a restrooms, or a tuck shop. That we have a company that has something else other than these, we can also always add them to this enumeration list. But here in my data table or in my data model, where I list my attributes, the facilities would have an enumeration data type. So this is not typically something that a user or a creator of an app, an innovator like yourselves, would necessarily do. But I think it's a good exercise while planning the app to really think about these different types of data that you would like to store, why you want to store it, and so you don't ask questions that is unnecessary because people don't like completing forms. So that's the main reason. So typically everywhere where you would have a form or you would have data that you would like to display to your user, you would use a database to do to keep all of that those records together and to be able to display it dynamically based on whatever rules you implement with this. So this is really just the beginning of mobile app development. After this comes the real implementation part. That is where we also implement logic, where we also can do some things automatically. So we can have one step follow the other. We could, if you click on a button, automatically update something. We could automate a process to save something or to send you an SMS or to send an email. We would also then be implementing security on top of this to make sure that you can't see the data of someone else. Again, back to the funny example, I don't want two people competing in this competition at the same time to see each other's answers or to see each other's results. You only want to see your own. So that is where I employ user roles and security settings to make sure that you only see the data that you are supposed to be seeing. And then there's a bunch of different ways in which we can implement this. The last video of the 3 videos that I've included in today's content was specifically dealing with, do you need a native app? Do you need a hybrid app? Do you use a web app? So there's a bunch of different ways in which you can implement this. That is not your concern. And usually, as they've said in the video, it is usually based on the amount of money you have available, or the skills that you have, or the previous technologies that you have been exposed to that will predetermine which of these technologies you would actually. Okay, Tegan asks whether the lecture will be on Zoom. I presume she's referring to the lecture on Friday morning. No, it will happen in the same way that this lecture is happening now. It will be on YouTube, live streamed, and then we make a video recording available afterwards again, so you can revisit it since the recording will be available. So you can really ensure that you watch that video 100 times if you need to, just to make sure that you looking at all of the different requirements. That's only okay. Now Nolitando asks, how can you resubmit if you want to resubmit something and you can't find the link? Well, firstly, it needs to be assessed So marked, and once it's marked, then it's typically returned to you, and then you can resubmit. If you're referring to the game of Friday, the Codemaster game, please do not resubmit until you get 15 out of 15. If you had 14 out of 15 or 12 out of 15, it's still good enough. It won't influence your final mark. It was just to give you an idea of which of your assignments you had correct. You are more than welcome to have the answers to all of it. The group admins already have the answers to the questions. So, well, of course, they had to have it because they had to mark it, but they are allowed to share it with you, and you really don't need to resubmit until you have 15 out of 15. There's also a question about when you can expect your next feedback. Every evening, we mark the assignments we receive that day. So, typically tomorrow morning, we should have new results available.
Good.
Okay, Tegan is asking whether she can use the data modeling to list different attributes of their own solution. No, that's not what the solution is about or what the question was asking. The question was related to if you are recording data with your app, then what data are you recording? Those would be the attributes. So it is not with regards to your solution that you complete that. It is the business that I'm listing. It's just because I have a button that is associated with the name business. And when I click on the button business, the data that I am collecting will be that specific data. Or if I am have a button events, then I will collect specific data about that event. So it is not to convince me that you have a good idea or for some other reason. So if you do not have a digital product, then you are supposed to either one, think about how you could involve or include an app as part of your solution. Maybe it is a training app that trains people how to use your product. Maybe it is an awareness app that creates awareness about the specific topic that you are addressing. So think about how you could include an app, and once you include that app, what would it look like? What would its functions be, and how would which features would it have? And then I also told you if you really can't think of any way in which you can include a mobile app in your Modiragatsi idea, then use my example of the tourism app and just go through the motions. Maybe do not look at my full answers and answer them yourself. So to gain that skill. But it is not, please don't use the data modeling to give me more information about your product. It will just confuse you and me. It is now 5 minutes to 6, so I close this stream at 6 o'clock. So if you have any final answers, please questions, please ask them now. We will end this stream in It is now 6 o'clock. Thank you for joining us for this live check-in on day 7. Tomorrow, join us for day 8. You will again receive your assignment for the day bright and early via WhatsApp. Please then log on to Fundi, look at watch the 3 videos, and watch it with intention, since the assignments are directly based on what you'll be learning in the videos tomorrow. Remember that our content for tomorrow was sponsored by Kesha IP, the 2 IP lawyers who have created the content for you, beautiful women who all were first qualified as scientists and then as lawyers. So that's what you need to become a patent lawyer. So they have created this content specifically for you. It's never before seen footage, and it's specifically created for you guys with new ideas for a young audience. So I think you will really enjoy and appreciate the content. So I look forward to welcoming you on day 8 tomorrow. Have a good evening. Stay warm and stay safe.